We're in Century City at the Fox Studios. I'm here with Dave. Dave, you want to tell us your full name and your job title here?
Sure. David Mendez. I'm the department head for grip, craft service, and canvas.
Okay, well, you want to tell us how long you've been in this industry?
35 years now.
35.
35 years. I'm close to hitting my 100,000 hour mark,
Good for
which
you.
is insanity. You would never thought of it, but it creeps up on you.
Yeah.
And then so it's been a interesting road.
Interesting road. Well, let's talk about that road. Let's start with the shows that you have worked on.
Okay. So my first show was Bob Newhart. It was the last Newhart show that he had done. That was my first show, and I did a whole series at Paramount where I worked on sitcoms, and where I did the final season of like Cheers. I did, started Frasier, the pilot of Frasier, because it just went from Cheers to Frasier, and then I did the whole run of the Star Treks.
Okay.
So, because at Paramount at the time they had Deep Space, they had Voyager, they had Star Trek. My dad was pushing Dolly on Star Trek, and so I did the extra hammer bit where every day I was on a different part of the universe, you would say, and those were my first shows.
You talked about your dad, and that was going to be my next question was, who inspired you to follow the grit department?
So, for my family, it's a family trade. So I have, on my dad's side, we're mostly grips or behind camera. So that started in the early 30s.
Wow.
Where my grandfather's brother got into the industry, and then he eventually became the grip department head over at MGM. So I'm the second one.
Okay.
And then he got everybody else in, and my grandfather got his nephews in and our cousins in. So we're all grips, or like we have some actors and stuff like that on my grandfather's side. You go onto a lot and they know your dad, they know your grandfather. You can walk onto a set, you can hang out with the guys. So I was very fortunate to be exposed to the older generation of grips and how the industry was. And it just sort of moved that way. I went to the Marine Corps, and the Marine Corps and gripping are kind of similar in a way. You do a lot of waiting. You carry sandbags. You're always listening to someone else who thinks they know what they're doing, right? So
right.
It's kind of a little bit of that.
It's very similar.
Yeah, it's very similar. So I think I'm true and true a grip.
Right. It wasn't very tough to follow the family's legacy to be a grip.
I don't think there was that kind of difficulty, because my dad and my grandfather always instilled, you're working, come on, let's go. You're going with them, you're working. And when I first started, I would look down from the perms, and there's my grandfather checking to see, are you doing a good job? Yeah, I'm doing good. There was more family back when I started in the industry. I wasn't the only one. There was a lot of family, and you always had that feeling you don't want to disappoint your family, so you had to hustle. The guys
Even
were
more.
the guys were you could not be thin-skinned or sensitive back then. You'd just be chewed up.
Right.
But at the same time, there wasn't this barrier of not wanting to teach you. If you didn't know something, they didn't, it wasn't hard. They didn't treat you poorly because you didn't know how to do it. They just came alongside and said, this is how you do it. You take a twist, you do this, you do that, right? Dumbass. You know what I mean? Something like that, right?
Right.
They had no problem yelling at you, but they also had no problem teaching you. And so you learned your basic skill set very early on in gripping. And I think that helped me a lot.
Sounds like there was more security in job positions than it is now. With the lot and working for the lot, you knew you were going to have a job, versus now it's a little bit different.
Yes, it is extremely different. When my dad started, even my grandfather, you would finish a show and go right on to something else.
Wow.
You would go to the department. The department would say, hey, you're on the gang today. Hey, you're on the show tomorrow. You got all your jobs through the department. So everything was based around the department. And there wasn't that many of us. Work was in town. If you went on location, you got the jobs to go on location through the department. And so, yeah, you had security.
Okay, you want to talk about some of the, outside of your grandfather and your father, some other key grips that you've worked under?
Sure. So the first guy to give me a show was Lee Margolis.
Okay.
His son is Larry Margolis, who used to run the canvas room and then work in the office at Paramount. Lee had gone on location and was my grandfather's roommate. And so he came on stage one day and said, hey, you, kid, you're on the show with me tomorrow. And then when I came back, he said, yeah, your grandfather helped me when I got in, I'm helping you. And he was my first real show. And he, like, you know, when you're younger, you don't understand all the things you should be taking advantage of, right? So he showed me how to set up flags and how to do this, and this is what this means, and this is why you're doing that. So Lee Margolis was my first production. He was the best boy at the time, but the first production best boy to really give me my shot of being on shows. Clyde Hart was my first gang boss pusher, and Clyde Hart was the key grip for War of the Roses.
Oh, wow.
My first day, I mean, I know nothing. I have my tools. I show up. It's dark. It's 6 a.m. I am at Paramount. And all he says is, who's going high? And I go, I'm going high. And I just start climbing the ladder.
And you're like, what am I doing?
And I don't even know where I'm climbing the ladder to.
Right.
But my dad says, if they say who's going high, you're going high. I didn't even know what that meant.
Right.
Like fully. And I just climbed the ladder. So I learned basic rigging from Clyde Hart in the very beginning. But I think one of my biggest influence was Tom Wozni, who's been around, you know, he's passed away. Fantastic person. And I've done features with him. I worked on the Hulk. And you know, when I wasn't doing a TV show during hiatus, I'd go jump on a show with him. And he would teach me basics of rigging, but also not to get upset about certain things. Like, this is why this guy's doing this. Don't get upset over that. This is why production's doing this. Take it easy. And gave me the maturity I needed to just sort of get through working with men. Like, I worked with men before, but when you're working day-to-day long hours and everybody has different personalities, you have to know how to work with them and get the job done. And he would say, like, hey, Dave, this guy's, just let him do his thing. You're going to do this. And he would, like, you two would team up together. You know, I'll team you up with this guy. You work better with him. So he was a good mentor in that part. I was fortunate to work with Crevitt, Michael Crevitt. He was my, like, key grip. Like, Tom worked, it was his best boy. And I worked with Crevitt on the Jack Nicholson, As Good as It Gets. He was a great mentor. I once complained when we first started doing like $1 less rate, that when it first started like coming out, and I made a comment, oh, you know, $1. And he said, hey, you agreed to take this job? I said, yeah. He said, so you should do a good job no matter, because you agreed to take it. So it doesn't matter what the rate is. And I went, you're absolutely right. And since then, I've always kept that attitude. Whatever I agreed to work for, shouldn't change the way I work. I should always work 100% because I agreed to do it for this rate. Right. Right? Don't complain about it.
Yeah.
And so little tidbits like that. And then from Crevitt, when Crevitt, the last feature I did with Crevitt, I can't remember the name of the feature, he met Eric at Showrig.
Eric.
Eric was the owner of Showrig.
Okay.
He's passed away too. And then Crevitt started bouncing, why are you doing this, why are you doing that? And he took off to go work for Showrig. That's how he started working for Showrig.
Got it.
But on that feature, I met Bobby Ivner, who was the key grip for NYPD Blue, which brought me to Fox. And Bobby, the things I learned from Bobby was It doesn't matter how much they're screaming and pressuring you to hurry up. Just stay calm. Tell your guys, set the flag. Just because they're in your ear as the key grip screaming, hurry up, you don't transfer that to your guys.
Yes.
You told your guys to set the flag. Your guys are setting the flag. You take the heat for your guys.
What was something that you saw early in your career that you knew right away, that's going to be a game changer?
I think some of the hydroscopes and the Technicranes, some of the rigging, and I think when I first saw those come into play, I said, absolutely. And Chapman was great with the hydroscope when they first came out, the support. But I think seeing that equipment, I knew that was a game changer.
Right. What are some of your early mistakes that have helped you be a better grip? Or a better lot best boy, better foreman?
Slow down. Ask questions. Research it. Figure out all the angles. So I think a lot of that was maturity. I think over the years, not getting so pissed off about things, right? Look.
That's an ongoing lesson.
Look, a little bit, I'm Hispanic. That's not the excuse, but you're young. You get a little fired up. I can get a little. In the past, I've been fired up about.
We've all been guilty of that.
Right,
and I think sometimes for me it gets misconstrued as anger rather than passion.
Yeah, and I think I had some learning to do over the years, and. Yeah, I still make mistakes. Even the job I have now is you're learning.
So how did you transition from working on as a grip and then moving into the office?
Well, it wasn't planned.